We're going to take a break here in just a couple of minutes, but I wanted to talk a couple of other clock things. Remember in the beginning I talked about setting up your database so it had the fields in it that you wanted? And clearly, you know, with what Bettina showed you, you can see what you can do with that in categories and fields and things like that and showing, you know, instant analysis. But I wanted to talk just for a few minutes about what you can do if you set up your field. So let's say you've got that nationality field or a form field, or let's be even a little more creative. Remember I said, excuse me. Oh, I can do it. It's the schedule editor I'll need your help with. Do you remember at the beginning I talked about how there's going to be that session tomorrow, the power of the PD to create sustainable revenue? What if you coded your music and said, hey, these are love songs? That's a pretty easy one. Or, I don't know, Halloween songs. That's coming up. That's a pretty easy one in classical. There's a lot of song pieces that we know typically get played at that time. So when you're building your clocks, you go, well, that's really nice. I know I have that music. I can code it. Now what do I do? It's like, well, there's a couple things you can do. You can work with clock filters or scheduling filters. And the clock filter is the one that is, as we said, right here on the clock. So you can go to the filter tab, and this is the query that I showed you a little bit earlier. Same thing. We can pop down in this field. We can find what we're looking for. I need German music here. Now I can go ahead and say that and do that. And that becomes a clock filter. So I can actually come in, find my nationality, say contains any of. All my codes will be listed here, and I can pick some. And I can click OK. And I can add it. And we'll just say it's got to match one of those. And then I can pick my clock filter level. That's important because you get 3. And why would you have different ones? Maybe some are unbreakable rules. Some are breakable rules. I'd love to have this, but I don't have to have this. All right. And so you get the Martini Glass icon. What, no one's going to laugh at that? So I just have to digress for a second. So my job now is to test the software and to break it so that it doesn't break when you use it. So I'm sitting here looking at the software, and I'm talking to my boss, and I was like, so what's the deal with the Martini icon? And he goes, what are you talking about? I was like, well, when you make the filter. I said, it's a Martini glass, right? It's get the little, and then, Jill, it's a funnel with a 1 in it. I went, really? And he goes, yes. Go change it to clock filter 2 and you'll see what I mean. Oops, not that one. This one. Oh, would you look at that? Yeah, okay, yeah. It's not a Martini glass, but anyway, so you can have 3 different ones. And so what's the idea? If you're trying to target something. Now, this one you have to be thoughtful about because you'd have to do it on all your clocks. Now, if you're doing the Bettina thing with a format list, it's probably not so bad. You got a lot of clocks, could be more troublesome. But if you're trying to target something, you can use one of those 3. But here's the one I really want to show you. It's the scheduling filters. This one is really cool. This one you just check off the boxes. You go, okay, I can do any of those filters here. So I'm actually going to give you a non-classical example of this. So back in your home cities, when you're listening to the competitors and those commercial stations, do you ever do like all car song weekends, love song weekends? Yeah, right? You've heard that, right? How do they do that? Well, if they're not using MusicMaster, they make lots of clocks. If they're using MusicMaster, they can do scheduling filters. And so you basically go through your clock and you say, okay, this one can have session filters 1, 2, and 3. This one can have only session filter 1. This one can only have session filter 2. And the final one only gets session filter 3. Now again, we're probably not going to do car songs in classical, but play along with me for a second. So car songs, love songs, Halloween songs. So this weekend, I want to do car songs. And I'm going to set that up with the automatic scheduler on schedule filter number 1. Which means what? Position 3 and position 5. The first two positions will have my car songs. The following week, I'm going to do love songs. That's session filter number 2. Same clock, but now it's going to be the first and third song in the hour that would have the love songs. And then the third week, I'm going to do, whatever. And so now I say session filter 3, and so now my first position can have it, and my last position can have it. But I'm doing it all with the same clock. All I had to do is check off the boxes. And so you implement that over in the automatic scheduler. And when you fire this up, and again, this would be for people who do automatically schedule, and I realize there's some people who don't. But we'll show you after break how to do this same kind of thing without using the automatic scheduler. You come over to the filter tab, and there it is, session filter 1, 2, and 3. So I go, this week I want 1, and it needs to be Germans. Next week it's love songs. It's a completely different field, a completely different concept. But now I really want to blow your mind. So that session tomorrow is the power of the program director to create sustainable revenue. What if you went to your development director and said, have all these songs that have love themes in them? I could make a weekend of that really easily. Or I've got all these songs that clearly people enjoy listening to around Halloween. I'm sure you guys are way better at this. I'm sure you can come up with other concepts that you could think of. As Drew said, I'm the queen of cartoon classics. If it's in a cartoon, I know about it. Every Disney one, every Warner Brothers one. I went through the MGM library. Yes, Tom and Jerry. So what happened for 4 or 5 hours on a Sunday afternoon? I had conversations with cartoons. Seriously, I had all the audio. We would talk back and forth. I had it all set up on digital audio tape. And we would go back and forth. And then I would play the beginning of the famous Bugs Bunny cartoon where they've condensed the ring cycle down to 6 minutes. And, we'd hear, kill the wabbit, and then I would play Ride of the Valkyries. And at the very end, actually I was telling Drew this earlier, that Warner Brothers cartoon has the distinction of being the only cartoon where Bugs Bunny dies. But he also breaks the plane. Elmer Fudd's carrying him off, and he turns and he looks at the screen and he looks at you and he goes, he's dead. He goes, well, what did you expect? It's an opera. So now you've got all of that stuff in your database. Remember, we talked about your library and how you code it. What's important for you? Now you walk down to the development director's office and say, hey, I could build a whole weekend around this. I could do this special programming for you. That's what we did at Kent State every Sunday afternoon. It was always something special. Right down the road in Kent from Cleveland. So we did rock and roll classics. All those guys who ripped off the rock and roll guys who ripped off classical music. Every week it was something different. And all we have to do is say, I need the music that's fill in the blank. What's the theme? It's cartoons. Now all I have to do is schedule it. So every single time with the same clock, all I have to do is change that session filter. I want to do the all Germans? Fine, not a problem. I pick nationality. I say Germans. And that's what I'm going to get in those positions that I've checked off. And I won't click, I can click OK here. I don't want to actually start the automatic scheduler. But that would allow me then to get wherever I said this is session filter 1, that's where those are going to show up. It's a rule, so you have to turn the rule on in the rule tree, but that's it. There's no built-in extra clocks. You just have to go in and check those boxes off. And now think about it. Your development director is going to love you because, you're going to have all that in there, and you can. He walks down the hall and says, can you play Halloween music? Oh, yeah, sure, not a problem. When do you want it to air? Love songs for Valentine's Day? Fun drive music, if that's what you're doing. We talked about having a field for fun drives. You could do it for that. All those kinds of things. Really fascinating way to. It's the same music, and I think that's really a key. It's the same music that you play all year long, but all you're doing is repackaging it. You think the guy down the street who's playing 80s music and is doing car songs is playing songs that he doesn't play normally? No, he plays car songs all week. You just don't think about it, and they just don't point it out. So this lets you package it really quickly and really efficiently. Questions about those things? Yeah?
I was just thinking if I'm planning Christmas songs, so normally they're forbidden in my yeah, because I don't want Christmas songs all the time. So when I use a session filter for Christmas songs, who is stronger? When it's forbidden, or when I want is on this position. So is it possible to crash this thing when it's forbidden, when I say, okay, but I want on this position, I want it with the session filter. So can it be stronger, or if it's forbidden, it's forbidden?
Right. So that's a matter of setting up the rule. So if I've understood you correctly, it's how important is it? And so the rule tree has a whole section of these called format clock rules. And so what you'll see here is one each for each of those clock filters, and one each for the 3 session filters. So when you drag this into your rule tree, you can do a number of things. You can say, this is an unbreakable on this category, or it's a breakable on this category. And because, depending, like if you set it up like I suggested, where, you have multiple checkboxes, or however you're going to do that, especially with the session filters, you can drag those across, and you can say session filter 1 is unbreakable. I'd really like session filter 2, but if I don't get it, it's okay. So that all becomes a rule issue for you and what's important.
Is it possible to have one of these filters that says it's a song ID greater than? Because we know our latest CD is 90,000, and greater than that will be, or lesser than that will be older. Is that possible to do that, to work in across all categories and new releases?
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be one way to do it. I think the other way would be, we're talking about fields. You might just have a field that says new release. And you may just, that's an easy one, because you may decide that a release is new for X amount of time. I had a tech support call a long time ago where the guy said his songs were in his current category. It was a commercial radio station. And he said, after 7 days, it moved out of currents. I was like, what if it's still popular? No, after 7 days, that's it. It's gone. We're like, okay, it doesn't bother us. We're just trying to figure that one out, because you're like, well, what if everyone else is still playing it? And like, okay. So that would be one way to do it. You certainly could also, do a move date on it. So if you did a checkbox field on it and said, this is a new release, then you'd be able to, put a move date on it and say after this number of plays or after such and such date, it's no longer new. But that would be one of those things where you'd need a field, because as long as you have a field, then you can query for it.
As we enter new music in, and this relates to, I think you call it the pass order, or the order in which the schedule order, right? Like, as I add new stuff in, it most often goes to that stuff first.
Yeah, so his issue is that if it's the new ones are all going to be clumped together. So depending on your format, especially if you're non-commercial, that could be even more important, because you might end up all of a sudden sounding super, super new. So that's a feature. Yes, Mr. Knapp?
When I make my music changes each week, I go through and clear all the new song codes, and I create new ones again now based on the songs that I want to have that code. So I can keep them from coming too close together. And I don't get, suddenly I get 4 or 5 new songs that I just added last week all together.
Yeah, that's a terrific way to do it. Let me show you another quick way. So I've gone through the whole library maintenance thing, right? Do I have a category here? Nope. Here we go. I got a category, and I go, hey, these are all the pieces that I've just added. I mark them with F7. So these are all the pieces that I just added to the database. And whatever color, I'm a little dismayed that that's my color of marking, but I have to admit, I guess I picked that. But you get to change it to make it look the way you want. You've just added all of these pieces to your category. And you can do this in a couple of different ways. You could do all the categories at once, or you could just pick one. But I'm in Dataset, Schedule, Order. And now I can go to this little icon that has red on one side and blue on another. It's a little ladder thing. And it allows us to arrange. And one of the things that I can do for arranging, and I just have to find it on the list, there it is, distribute marked songs. And so now think about it. You got this category, but you have this chunk of new stuff. Instead of that chunk all being, you added them, so sequentially their song IDs are going to be one right after another. So now I say, just distribute that amongst the whole category. And so now they, start to show up. Marking is one of those tricky things. I want to put an asterisk on that. You want to be very careful that you check your database first to see if you've got marking in it. Marking, for most people, I tell marking should be a temporary thing that you use so that you don't forget you're doing it for something else. But you can easily go into library maintenance and there's a checkbox icon. And it's going to tell you immediately how many, if there are any marked songs. In this case, there's 15. And you'll know ahead of time that they're there. Because you clearly don't. There are a lot of functions you can do, and you can do them on marked songs, like moving stuff, deleting stuff. So you want to be really careful about that before you go ahead and activate it and say, yeah, do that function on marked songs.